A couple of days ago, I covered the political controversy and scandal surrounding Blizzard and their pro-China stance with regards to a player speaking out about the protests in Hong Kong. I don't want to rehash for too much of the video, but to summarize here, during an official Hearthstone Grandmasters tournament, a player named Blitz Chung spoke out in his post-game interview regarding the independence of Hong Kong. Translated to English, he said, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our time," which was met with immediate retribution from Blizzard. The response was a temporary suspension from Grandmasters tournaments and a total loss of all winnings for that season. This is technically entirely within Blizzard's right to do under their terms of service, but the public outcry has only grown in the aftermath. Blitzchung was rightfully aware that such a statement would carry controversy. His goal was to raise awareness, which has absolutely been the result, but he also understood that a punishment would be handed down as a direct result. This punishment is not necessarily because of an actual moral or ethical position by Blizzard, it is rather a function of their deeply invested financial interest in the Chinese markets. Activision Blizzard has recently been leveraging mobile titles to maximize profit return, games like Candy Crush, Diablo Immortal, though Blizzard has been extremely quiet about that one recently and it would require further research for me to understand exactly why, but moving on. And now the Call of Duty mobile adaptation are a massive section of the publisher's portfolio, and focusing in on Call of Duty more specifically, it has already become one of the most heavily downloaded apps of all time. It is, in fact, the most downloaded phone game in history, and on top of that, Activision Blizzard is actively seeking approval for the title in, you guessed it, the Chinese markets. Approval for a game to be dispersed in China is quite tedious and highly regulated. The government has had periodic freezes and delays on the queue of possible games, often requiring changes or various forms of outright censorship. So having the best possible relationship to give a mobile app such as this a reasonable chance at successful approval is extremely important to have. China also has no reservations whatsoever when it comes to leveraging economic superiority in certain markets. A recent NBA situation saw them influence league publicity by restricting what is shown in mainland China. They even severed partnerships, and this type of practice is seen in a variety of separate industries with mixed results, but one underlying similarity. China does not want global commentary on issues of sovereignty with regards to Hong Kong. All of this makes no mention of the fact that Tencent, a Chinese gaming powerhouse of a company, has a vested financial interest in Activision Blizzard, and the Chinese market as a whole is only rivaled by the United States in terms of yearly revenue and user spending. It was inevitable that Blizzard would cater to Chinese agendas, and should not surprise anyone at all. However, just because we always knew that they would follow the power of currency and profit does not mean that they are not now trapped between a rock and a hard place. Blitzchung has been far more successful than he likely ever expected in his endeavor. Politicians are discussing the ban, national news agencies, and this type of scrutiny is on a global scale, not just within the United States. The player response has been emphatic. There is widespread support of Blitzchung's right to express his own beliefs. There is now internal protests within Blizzard itself, with staff covering segments of the company motto that refer to individuals' right to express their own beliefs, since the inverse has clearly been enforced here in the case of Blitzchung. Staff have even reportedly walked out in direct protest as well. There are threads popping up all across social media, from Reddit to Twitter, where ex-Blizzard employees of notable position in the past were taking a stand against products they themselves helped create in support of the cause, and many players are going so far as to cancel their World of Warcraft subscriptions or delete their accounts entirely. At this point, I would like to express that there are discrepancies between what I have personally seen and what is being claimed in various threads. One user expressed that the methods by which to confirm one's identity and delete a Battle.net account were down, and many have confirmed this in the thread itself, while others have refuted it, stating that they were able to complete the procedure. Blizzard themselves have come out and cited technical difficulties and acknowledged that some issues do exist right now, but I'm struggling to see that as a concentrated effort to prevent users from leaving the platform. It's entirely possible, honestly it is, but if it were to be their goal, the action is only fanning the flames. I find it far more likely, and also just as damaging by the way, that mass exodus of the Battle.net servers all at once as a direct result of the boycott is leading to the system crashing intermittently. The process of deleting an account is not a feature that would normally be receiving much traffic. It really is a rarely utilized set of tools. Most players, when they quit a Blizzard-owned game, will just move on and leave the account dormant, so massive levels of simultaneous traffic, at least to me, seems like a far more likely culprit behind the issues. But regardless, whether or not it is Blizzard attempting to prevent mass exodus or their servers cracking under the strain of it actually occurring, it's not good for them. There are also reports of battle tag changes now restricting the use of Hong Kong or Free Hong Kong, and again, these reports are somewhat mixed. I can't speak fully to their authenticity, but Blizzard has become the target of anger and distaste so extreme they may be permanently altering their corporate image in a way akin to Electronic Arts with Battlefront 2. The fire is raging, and Blizzard has very limited options to put it out. On the one hand, they could reverse their decision regarding Blitzchung, something I cannot even remotely picture as a plausible scenario, but it would go a long way towards easing the publicity nightmare that they are being subjected to. The upside, an intense reduction of the boycott enthusiasm, though probably not a full dispersal if we are being totally honest here. People love to hate companies like this. The downside, they severely risk their ability to not only get Call of Duty Mobile approved in a massive new market, the Chinese market, but they also face severe ramifications to the eligibility of their existing games in that very same region, which could have disastrous ramifications to their share price, their longevity, and their existing projects. On the other hand, they could continue to side with China and double down further, which so far appears to be their stance. The upside to this, market access, continued stability from a business perspective on current projects, and the hope that Chinese income may offset any damage done by subsequent boycotts. The downside, their global reputation continues to tank so badly that their own staff turn against them. They become an industry pariah and go down in history as one of the worst, if not the worst, gaming company, from a PR standpoint that is, with a stink associated with their brand so toxic it will be nearly impossible to wash off, maybe ever. The situation is made even harder because they have already released different statements to Western and Chinese markets respectively. In one, the language was far more passive, but in the other, there was much more pointed condemnation of Blitzchung's outburst, and it seems very clear that their primary goal, as it stands right now, is to protect Chinese interests. All this is made even more difficult because China takes extremist positions when it comes to image. If Blizzard does not unilaterally side with them and attempts any form of damage mitigation whatsoever, they will be forced to retaliate and escalate, which is something which would be devastating for Blizzard. So in effect, they either lose by siding with China or they lose by siding not with China. I maintain that the likelihood of Blizzard taking a pro-Hong Kong liberation stance is slim to none. There is almost no fiscal justification for it unless they are facing literal collapse as a result of the boycott, which in all my years I have yet to see come to fruition in any instance of public outcry. But even with that skepticism, it's clear that Blizzard has stumbled into the crosshairs of public backlash that is ramping up to perhaps break records in the gaming space. The reason it is still picking up speed is because it is no longer a purely gaming-related issue, as was the case with Battlefront 2, where a beloved franchise that extends far beyond the sphere of video games in particular was infected with gambling, which drew in parents and legislators alike. Blizzard is tapping into a censorship issue combined with fear of Chinese global influence and dominance. Having US-based companies, or companies of any nationality for that matter, cave to Chinese demands by restricting the freedom of their own user base can strike a set of chords that are not unique to gamers, and thus have much more explosive potential. Regardless of the outcome, we are witnessing the fall of Blizzard in real time. The company was already far from revered lately. Announcements such as Diablo Immortal or certain World of Warcraft retail practices have tainted their image for quite some time, but the re-release of Classic WoW and a few other lingering lifelines have kept them in the arena of public redemption. It is possible. Their stance towards Blitzchung, however, having effectively gone viral and put them under a microscope, may have now permanently destroyed that image, and it's truthfully sad to see a company that used to be revered so highly in a state of total freefall. I maintain that it is extremely unlikely anything will happen other than a simple equation of where do we get the most money, okay, now do it, but it is somewhat heartening to see such solidarity and a rising level of commitment to making a reasonable difference in the industry. It's really not a bad feeling. Then again, on a rudimentary level, it is an equation pitting moral principles against massive levels of profit, and the cynical voice in me is screaming that there really is no conflict there. The likelihood of meaningful change remains very low, even in the face of compelling and extremely vocal feedback. That's it for today, though. If you want to support the channel, there are links down below, merch, Twitter, Patreon, and other stuff as well. I've been running into some copyright issues lately because YouTube still just defaults to screwing over creators in favor of large companies, and because of that, I'll emphasize the merchandise in particular or the Patreon, but in the end, things will continue as normal regardless, so I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.